Okay, good morning, everybody. We had some technical difficulties when I was filming the first video live for this presentation, so we're re-recording right now on a Loom, and let's begin. So the college recruiting process, first thing you need to know is there's 5 different options. So NCAA, there's Division I, Division II, and Division III within the NCAA. Something to keep in mind at the Division I level. Division I level is made up of multiple types of scholarships. So for men's and women's basketball and football, the biggest revenue building sports, they only offer full ride scholarships or walk-on positions on teams. So there are no partial scholarships in those 3 sports. Every other sport at the Division I level offers mostly partial scholarships, and the better you perform, the more scholarship you're able to earn. So at the presentation, I shared an example as my wife was a college track and field athlete at Central Michigan University at the Division I level. She started off her first year with a $2,000 scholarship and had her books paid for. In her second year, she performed well her first year. In her second year, she doubled that scholarship to $4,000. Still not a lot in the grand scheme of things. But by her junior and senior year, she was on an 80%, and then her senior year, 100% scholarship because she scored really well and won the Mid-American Conference in the heptathlon. So a lot of other Division I sports are very similar. Baseball is very similar, in which they have a pool of money and they get to decide how and where they want to spend it. The Division II level, also full or partial, in every sport, again, they similarly have a pool of money, and the coach on those men's and women's teams at the Division II level gets to decide how much each player earns. So when I was coaching at Grand Valley State University at the Division II level, prior to coming to Catholic, we had roughly 10 full ride scholarships, and we carried about 15 to 16 players. So we had to decide how best to distribute that money. So at the Division III level, in the NCAA, there are no athletic scholarships. So those universities typically find ways academically or through other types of scholarships to find athletes money. All right. The term walk-on is a term for a student athlete who is paying his or her own way and still participating on that team. The NAIA level is an association that's separate from the NCAA. So their scholarships, they really don't have to follow any of the NCAA's rules. So they have the flexibility to give a lot of athletic scholarships based on what the university decides to do. So they will also rely heavily on academic scholarships and scholarships for merit-based, for volunteerism, that they will try to find their athletes money. But schools like Aquinas College, which would be one example of an NAIA school, one of our point guards from 3 or 4 years ago is receiving, I think it's around $45,000 a year to attend Aquinas, and is receiving a scholarship worth $42,500 a year from them for academics and athletics. So it is possible to earn a lot of athletic scholarship money at the NAIA level. Some schools around here, as I said, Aquinas, Cornerstone, Spring Arbor are some examples of some of those schools. The NJCAA is the National Junior College Athletic Association. Inexpensive to go to a JUCO, but also know that they do offer full and partial scholarships. Okay, this next graph, when you're looking at this, things to keep in mind. The percentage of students who participate in NCAA sports from high school total is at 4% at the Division I level. That number doubles up to 8% at the Division II level and quadruples at the Division III level. So when we're talking about playing college sports, which is a lot of high school athletes' goal, there are 4 times the opportunities to play at the Division III level than there are at the Division I level. So there's a lot more opportunity as you go down in divisions to Division II and Division III. This next This next statistic that I'd like you to take a peek at is just the percentage of high school athletes that play in these particular sports in at the college level. So, of all levels, percentage of high school men's basketball players who play in the NCAA is 3.4%. Women's basketball 3.8%, football 6.5%. So again, football is they carry so many more roster players that they have a lot more scholarships to offer. But that number is still considerably low at 6.5%. Baseball at almost 7%. Men's hockey 11%, and men's soccer at 5.7%. So if you're going to play at the next level, you have to be elite. You have to be the best of the best, and that takes a lot of time and commitment. Okay, one of the most important things that you need to know is that in order to play at the NCAA level, in order to take visits at the NCAA level, at the Division II or Division I level, there's two different types of visits. One is an unofficial visit where the university does not pay for anything except for tickets to games. So you have to pay your way, your transportation, your food. You'd have to pay for everything. If you were heading to Grand Valley State on an unofficial visit, you'd have to pay for everything except for the tickets to get into a football game if you were going to visit in the fall. The opposite of that is an official visit in which the university pays for your travel, for your food. They can pay for your stay in a hotel. You're allowed on that official visit to spend 48 hours on campus, and there's only a certain number of official visits you're allowed each year, and that starts your junior and senior year. You can take as many unofficial visits, from when you're in middle school to high school, as many as you want, as many as the university is willing to have you on campus for. But in order to do that and to set yourself up for future recruiting, you need to apply and enroll at the NCAA's Eligibility Center. So in the middle of this slide right here, we've linked that website for you. The first thing that you're going to see when you click on this website is the option to select one of three different options. So if you're looking to play college athletics at the Division III level or the NAIA, you don't have to do anything with the NCAA Eligibility Center if you're looking to play in the NAIA. But if you're looking to play NCAA Division III, you're going to select option 1. Option 1 is free, and you're just basically creating an account, and that will notify our counselors, and our counselors will upload your transcripts. And so that colleges and universities who are interested in recruiting you can pull those. But again, that's free. That's option number 1. You're going to skip option number 2. That's not for anybody except for college students that are looking to transfer. So you're going to go right to option number 3 if you're being recruited at the Division II or Division I level. And you have to create a profile in option 3 as you do in option 1. But with this profile, it is a paid profile that you're paying for. I believe it's $90, maybe to $100, $110 for that profile. But there is an option if you do receive free and reduced lunch. There is an option to have that fee wiped out. So if you receive free and reduced lunch, there's a box when you're clicking out the payment form. You just click on that box, and you don't have to fill in any of the payment information. That will send an alert to our counselors, Mrs. Meerman, Mrs. Smitley, Mr. Passanaw, and they will probably within 24 hours confirm that that's the case for you at school, and then that payment will be voided. So again, before you take visits to the Division II and Division I level, you have to fill out the NCAA eligibility form, and option number 3 is going to be your selection. Okay, want to become a student athlete, you have to have GAME. The first one stands for GPA and test scores. All right, many schools are no longer testing since COVID, so GPA is going to be the most important part for you to look at. I'm sorry, interrupted by somebody who walked into my classroom, but the GPA and the test score. The test score I'm talking about is the ACT and the SAT. And in order to qualify for college athletics prior to COVID, you had to have an ACT score and a GPA high enough to qualify you. Many schools outside of the Ivy League right now are going to no test, are turning into no test schools. So as of right now, there's a lot of them are strictly looking at your core GPA. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Obviously, to be a student athlete, you have to have ability, so skill, physical ability, character, leadership. College coaches are looking at all of those things. Motivation, you have to be motivated to work when nobody's watching, and you have to have some exposure. And we'll talk about some ways in which you can best expose yourself and your game to those college coaches. So grades and test scores on the next slide. For the Division I and Division II level, you have to have taken 16 core classes. So your core classes are your math, your science, your English, your history classes, and language. So classes that do not count at Catholic Central would be your weight training, your art, some of those electives. So you need to take 16 core classes in your 4 years of high school, and 10 of those core classes have to be finished prior to the start of your 7th semester or prior to the start of your senior year. And 10 of those have to be in English, math, or natural or physical science. So when a college is looking at your transcript, they're going to throw out the GPA of those non-core classes and only look at those. So my example that I used, if you have an A in art, if you have an A in weight training, and then you have all C's in the rest of your core credit classes, your core GPA would be a 2.0, even though with those two A's, your cumulative GPA, adding all of those scores together, would be higher. The NCAA will not look at non-core classes, so it's really important that you do well in those core classes. The Division III and NAIA, there's no clearinghouse needed, so you just have to meet the enrollment guidelines of whatever school you're applying for. And then to get into grades and test scores, to get into a JUCO, such as Grand Rapids Community College, Muskegon Community College, you just have to have graduated high school. So there is GPA core courses requirements for the Division I level, and that is a 2.3. So in order to get in, if you have a 2.29 GPA, it does not round up in your core classes. The Division I level will not be allowed to admit you. So again, it is the phrase that they used to use was 2.3 or take a knee, 2.3 or you can't play. Division II level is a little bit lower. It's a 2.2 GPA in your core classes. Again, the last line is about the sliding scale. If you had a higher ACT, SAT score, you could have a lower GPA. Again, most schools are not looking at that test score anymore. So you simply need to meet the GPA requirements and the core credit class requirements. Okay, there's different recruiting periods, so this is something to keep in mind when you are working with your club or your AAU team, and even your high school coach as well. But there are, just to make sure that you are participating in events where college coaches can come watch. So there's different types of periods. There's a contact period where coaches can have face-to-face contact with athletes. They can visit schools. They can watch your games. There's an evaluation period where they can watch athletes. They can visit high schools. They can call, write, or text athletes. However, cannot have any off-campus contact with the student athletes. So it's important to know if you go to an AAU event on the weekend and just an evaluation period, a lot of those college coaches will walk right by mom and dad and the player, not being able to talk to them because they are in those evaluation periods. So that happens quite a bit at AAU events in the spring and summer, depending on what period it is. There's a quiet period. Only face-to-face contact is allowed on college campuses. However, they can call, text, or send letters. And then lastly, there's a dead period, no face-to-face contacts. They can call, text, or write letters as well. So a couple things about those recruiting periods. College coaches are officially allowed to talk to high school student athletes, to call with an unlimited amount of calls, texts, messages on social media platforms starting June 15th of the high school student's end of his or her sophomore year. So June 15th at midnight on the 15th or the 14th at midnight, they can receive calls, texts, emails, as many types of communication as possible. Before then, they're not allowed to talk to high school student athletes unless they are on campus. If they are freshmen or sophomores. But one thing to keep in mind, and we tell our student athletes this all the time, is even if they can't contact you, you can contact college coaches. So one thing to keep in mind is that you're going to want to try through your high school coach or your AAU coach, your club coach, try to have as many college coaching contacts as possible. If a college coach, if you're on their campus for one of their recruiting camps or elite camps, and a college coach gives your mom or dad or guardian his number, her number, you can call them during any of the periods if you are the person reaching out. So a lot of times, in order for college coaches to be able to talk to high school athletes, they will contact the high school coach and just tell the high school coach, here's my number. Have this player give me a call once a month just to check in. We're interested in recruiting him or her. We can't call them yet, but they can call me. So just something to keep in mind in terms of communication with those college coaches. From my end, as a coach, as a high school coach, I don't coach AAU basketball. These are the questions that come up the most from those college coaches. What is he or she like as a student? This is a big one. If I asked his or her teachers, what would they say about him? So, like, what is he like when he walks in the classroom? We've had college coaches call our high school teachers here at Catholic Central to ask them directly about what it's like having this student athlete in their class. If a college coach is going to offer you a scholarship, they're investing 4 years of their lives into you and probably $100,000 plus. So these are some important things that they want to know. What are his or her parents or guardians like? How often does he work on his game or her game outside of your training hours? And how is he in the locker room after a loss? How is he in practice the next day after a loss? And obviously, they have assistant coaches now. If they're really interested in you, they'll start following you on social media. So what is his or her presence like on social media? All really important questions to keep in mind. All right. Also, obviously, to be recruited, you have to have ability, right? We're talking about the top 3 to 7% of all high school athletes. So with that ability, you need to know that there's a difference in skill, speed, size, and strength matters as well. So the reason I write this and talk about ability is because there are very specific things that colleges are looking for in some of their student athletes. We've had rowing coaches from the University of Michigan come and recruit our volleyball players because to be rowers, even though they might not have ever rowed here because they have a certain body type. Obviously, it makes a big difference in the game of basketball, your height, your reach, not just your speed as well. But we've had college players be recruited at the Division II level, and the Division I coaches have said he is as skilled as any player that I have, but I need him to be 2 inches taller if I'm going to recruit him. So there's things that you can control. Obviously, that height piece is something that you can't control, but the strength, working with our weight training staffs, with your high school coaches to become bigger, faster, stronger is a really important part of most college sports. So with that being said, one thing we always say to our players is to be realistic in your recruiting. Like, if you think that you're a Division I player and you've never received a call, a text, or an offer from a Division I school, then you're not a Division I player until that happens. So when you get to your junior year, when you get to your senior year, you are your college. You'll be the college player of the level that you're being recruited at. So Tim McCormick is one of my friends. I work a camp with him in Detroit every summer. He played in the NBA for 10 years, is a Michigan, played at the University of Michigan. He's a 10-year pro, retired pro, and one of the current NBA Players Association directors. And he's a current Pistons broadcaster, but he always says that players are probably one level below where they think they are, and the players are probably 2 levels below their actual level of where the parents think they are. So I like that quote. I try to use it all the time. We want the best for our sons and daughters, but you got to be realistic with who is recruiting you, right? If you receive form letters, there's 10 to 15,000 of those letters sent out to players all over the country in every sport all the time. So if you receive a form letter from Michigan State University, it doesn't mean you're being recruited by Michigan State University. I would say until that coach actually texts you, or calls your college, calls your high school, your club coach, because you're maybe a freshman and sophomore and they can't talk to you, until that communication actually happens, you're not being recruited at that level. So anyway, just something to keep in mind. The graph on the right here is circled home visit. That's an important part of the recruiting process when a scholarship typically is offered to a student athlete, depending on the sport. A lot of times with football players, they're 21 scholarship athletes per class, or 22. So football coaches might not be able to make that home visit happen. But in a lot of other sports, an important part after you make a visit, or in order to make a visit, college coaches will schedule a home visit, which is a visit in which their staff comes into your house, they sit with you, visit with you. Most of the time, the player's family has some sort of dinner for the coaches as well, and it's just a good time for them to meet your family, get to know you. But when those texts and those calls and those home visits start to come into play, it's obviously a great sign that they are recruiting you and truly interested in you, not just sending out form letters. So the best exposure, so everybody talks about exposure. The best exposure is to have college coaches in your best fit level see you play. So how do you make that happen? High school games, there's showcases, there's ID camps, there's AAU club or games. Each sport varies. So my advice to you is to try to find your person in your sport. And I don't know who that is. It might be your son or daughter's club coach. And if your son or daughter's club coach doesn't have college coach recruiting connections, that maybe check the next level up. So check with the director of that program. And if you're playing on or within a program or an organization who has sent players to college, somebody within that organization will have college coaching contacts, and they can give you advice. What's the best advice of for what to attend? For instance, there are camps and exposure camps in the state of Michigan that I would not recommend my players ever attend. Some of these exposure camps have 275 players attending, and each one of them is paying $80 to go to a 3-hour exposure camp. And when the player goes to that exposure camp, they're one of 280 players. There's really no exposure. It's sometimes even held during a dead period or a non-recruiting period. A lot of times they claim they're going to send out video from those events, and that video never is sent out. So for basketball, I think there's a lot better way to gain recruiting and gain exposure. And that's just simply to play with the right club teams in the right club tournaments. And sorry, I had another student come into my classroom. So basically with these showcases and ID camps, as I was saying before, for basketball, it's almost better when you're starting to become recruited, or when you're looking to be recruited, to go directly to some of these colleges, because they have elite camps, exposure camps. One of our current student athletes was interested in Hillsdale University. We sent him to a camp this past summer. The camp was much smaller than an ID camp that they could go to, and it was on campus. And afterwards, he had played so well, the coaches there took him on a tour of the campus and talked to him a little bit about their team and their recruiting process. And that was about half the price of an exposure event, and it was direct contact with the college that this student athlete is interested in attending. And it's also opened up his recruiting a little bit by having attended and having played well there. So my tip is to find the best event that works for you within your sport. So talk to your people, talk to your coaches. So something to keep in mind while at these showcases, elite camps, is in order to showcase yourself, you need to know that someone is always watching you. Parents and players both. So we've had players um, not be recruited because college coaches have seen the way that their parents um, have maybe either started gossiping or maybe talked bad about a coach, or the way they acted in the lobby after a game or a competition. So something to keep in mind. Okay, continuing this presentation. Um, Certain colleges will have grad assistants follow you on social media just to see what you're posting. So you always have eyes, you always have ears on you, and just something that you have to really keep in mind, especially when you don't play well or when things don't go your way. Lots of players, lots of parents have a tendency to jump on social media or criticize other, or maybe criticize anything that happened during that game, or critiquing other performances online. Just heads up that I would, if I was posting anything on social media, it would always be positive, joyful, and showing the more positive sides of your life and personality. One of my friends who played at the University of Michigan, Mark Hughes, he's the uncle to my college teammate who's now an assistant coach at Grand Valley. His name is J.R. Wallace, but when he was hired by an NBA team to go scout over in China, I remember him telling a story to J.R. J.R. passed a story to me about how when he was sent over there, he was not sent to watch these players play. He had a list of whatever, 5 to 10 athletes, and he didn't care about their performance at all. He cared about how they handled themselves during timeouts, in games when they were winning by 20, and games in which they were losing by 20. He simply wanted to make sure, or was sent there to make sure, before we offer this player a contract, that they are a good human being and they are somebody that we would want around their organization. So it's just something to keep in mind. College coaches think in the exact same way. They have to spend 4 years with this student athlete. They want them to be 4 good years. So another thing to keep in mind is giving your best effort, showcasing your skills, and communication. One of our better players at Catholic Central, we have currently right now 9 players playing in college, 2 players playing professionally, who have played for me in my time here in the last 9 years here. But one of those is Jacob Polakovich. He just had 16 points and 10 rebounds against Notre Dame 2 weeks ago. And his first offer came from Coach Reckeweg, who was the head coach at Northwood University at the time. So they offered him a full ride scholarship at a fall league game, playing with his high school teammates. And Jeff Reckeweg was watching the game upstairs on the walking track and called me. I was downstairs watching. Our high school coaches aren't allowed to coach. He called me and said, "Hey, tell Jacob we'd like to offer him a full ride." He is the loudest player in the gym. So that communication piece is a big one. College coaches don't want to see, especially in team sports, they don't want to see athletes who are quiet and not willing to talk on the court or on the field. It's a big piece, coaching piece that they have to teach during, a freshman or sophomore's first 2 years in college. So anytime you can showcase those communication, those leadership skills, it's going to help with scholarship offers. Okay, recruiting video tips. So there's a link here to a YouTube video on the Huddle app, in which most of our sporting teams at Catholic Central have the Huddle app. And there's a link here teaching you how to create a highlight film. My advice for the highlight films is I would keep them short, between 45 and 60 seconds long. To me, there's not a college coach in the country that's going to spend 5 minutes watching a highlight tape. But if they see something they like within 45 to 60 seconds, they'll probably reach out to a high school coach or an AAU coach for full game video of that athlete. So keeping it 45 to 60 seconds also allows those messages, for the most part, to be texted from one person to the other. I know when I send film or highlight clips to a college coach, to Thomas Kelly at Michigan State, like everything that I send to him, he forwards over to Coach Izzo, and it has to be a size that is easily textable. So I would have, this is just me and my opinion on this, if you have a highlight tape, I wouldn't post it myself if I was a high school athlete and I wouldn't have my parents post it either. I know that seems a little backwards to today's society that posts everything online, but I just think it speaks towards the reputation of the high school coach or the club coach. If that person is willing to send a text out with this highlight tape, it just speaks more highly about the student athlete if it comes from somebody like that who is considered a pro in their field. So whoever your one person is who connects you with college coaches for recruiting, I would have him or her send it out or post on their social media before you have a parent do so. So parents' tips: don't overpost. College coaches are recruiting you too, so they could be following you. I've known an assistant coach at Central Michigan University who stopped recruiting a student athlete from the Grand Rapids area because of this parent's mom and dad and how much they posted online, how much they shared. They overshared, they overposted, and they thought based on that evidence that they just didn't want the student athlete as a part of their program. So don't overpost. Less is more. It's my opinion that players need time to develop. So if you're posting once a week, those college coaches aren't going to see the development that should take place in 3 or 4 months of off-season time. So for my high school program, I post a couple videos during the summer, and then I really haven't posted anything, or I don't have our social media people post anything in the fall. And it's good because when we start our high school season here in a couple weeks, we're going to have a lot of college coaches that come to me and say, man, I haven't seen this kid in 3 months, and he looks a lot stronger, or he's shooting the ball so much better. That happened with our players last year and led to some full ride offers for our players. So I think less is more. Give the players time to develop. They don't have to post everything or feel the fear or the pressure of having things posted so often on them. So, like I said, have a full game link available and ready to send. If you have a highlight tape, you need to have a full game link tape that you can also send. So have that ready. If college coaches are truly interested, they will ask for the full game tape. Next up, a recruiting movie. Like, this is what they should look like, in my opinion. It shouldn't just be shooting the basketball. There's so many other components to, what a student athlete does. So I like to put hustle plays on there. I like to put plays on here that develop team or show team culture. So here's a recruiting movie example that I have for trying to gain interest from Caden Brown from last year's playoff run. So you notice the first couple clips are of him and assists. So how can he make his teammates better? College coaches know that he averaged 24 points a game. Now we have some offensive clips here. And then the end of this video will finish with some of his hustle plays, diving on the ground for loose balls. But again, if a college coach was to see this, they're going to see a variety of clips of him being unselfish and celebrating right there, giving his teammate a high five. So those are the type of 45 to 60-second clips I send out to gain interest. And then once a student athlete is being recruited by the university, or even after offers, I typically will send out 15 to 20-second videos such as this one, showcasing a little of what we do in the off season, what this student athlete is doing. In this case, this is for Fat. I texted this clip to Juwan Howard and a couple other high major coaches that are recruiting Fat, just to say, hey, I know you're recruiting him. He's working his butt off. This was him at 6 a.m. yesterday, and this is him on a squat rack, so that they know that he's doing some of the things already in high school that he'll be expected to do at the college level. Paying for recruiting companies, this is my own personal opinion. Every sport's different, so ask your person. But in basketball, I think it's a money grab. And none of the 9 student athletes that we have that are currently playing in college have ever paid $1 for a recruiting site's profile. So they just haven't done it. There's a lot of them out there. To me, they're money grabs. And to me, if you are playing for the right club team, or if your high school team is playing in enough showcase events, And if you're good enough, you will play in front of college coaches and they will recruit you. Sometimes it takes a little more time for others. Not every athlete's being recruited as a freshman or sophomore in high school. A lot of times it happens in their junior year. For Luca Ressler, who's now the starting point guard at Calvin University, he didn't really start being heavily recruited until the summer of his senior year. And now he's starting as a freshman at Calvin and having a great start to his career right now. So I wouldn't pay for them. Instead, I would attend elite camps. I would go directly to those universities that you're interested in, that have shown some interest in you. I would make sure you find the right AAU team who is playing on weekends, recruitable weekends during live periods where college coaches can come watch. And then obviously continue to put in extra work at Catholic Central. Tips for every grade: take as many unofficial visits as possible. There is not a limit to how many you can take. So every time you can see a new campus, you can talk with the new coaching staff. Every time you can do that, I would recommend it. I would make sure that you're playing high school AAU club sports. You're watching as many college sporting games as possible, and then obviously continue to work when no one's watching. One important point for freshman level grades: high GPA should be the most important thing that you work on or outside of your individual skill. And with those grades, this counts for all levels, but pluses and minuses do not count when you're looking at the core GPA tally. So a good way to figure out what your core GPA is just to add these up and divide by the total number of classes that you're taking. A's, all A's, A minuses, A pluses are worth 4 points, B minuses, B pluses, B's are worth 3, C's are 2, D's are 1, and E's are 0. So you need to be working in the classroom like you're trying to earn a scholarship. Sophomore timeline, again, keep your GPA as high as possible. Start to write down a list of 10 to 20 schools that you're interested in and share those with the people that are going to help you make your decision. Look to attend elite camps, summer ID camps, and again, take the PSAT, SEC, and even take that serious. Even though some schools are a no-test school, sometimes they will ask me for the student's PSAT score just to see if they're handling their business the way they should be in the classroom. Juniors and seniors, you can take a peek at this timeline. And again, everybody's timeline is different. One thing I would recommend at the bottom of this list is starting your senior year. I would apply to all of the schools that you're interested in possibly attending, even if they didn't offer you a scholarship. Reason being, when I was coaching at Grand Valley, if students would apply before the December deadline, they would automatically qualify for an early application scholarship, which was $2,000 per student athlete. So if they would apply afterwards, then they wouldn't receive that $2,000 scholarship, and that would then have to come out of our budget if we were offering that student a scholarship. So it saved us money that we would have to spend in our budget just by applying early. It doesn't force you to go to a school, but it's always a good idea for seniors during their senior year. Okay, just a couple myths. If the schools that I really want to go to doesn't recruit me, I'm not a good player. Wrong. There's all kinds of players that end up playing all 4 years in college. Some of them end up playing professionally that did not go to their dream school. So you can have an incredible experience and earn a degree by going to a different school. Go to the school that's recruiting you. If your grades are too low, this is another myth. The coach will get you in. That is absolutely wrong. If you, like I said before, if you want to go Division I and you have a 2.2, that university will not admit you under any type of scholarship if you don't get at least a 2.3. So you have to have the academics to do so. All right, next one. If I haven't signed with the college by March of my senior year, I can't play in college. Wrong. Some players decide to sign late, commit late. There is a signing period in the fall, an official signing period, and a signing period in the spring of each athlete's senior year. But past the spring 1 week signing period, you can sign at any time. Okay, a couple other things about just other myths. If a college doesn't get back to you right away, don't worry about it. That's the way college coaches are. It might take them time. Sometimes they're sifting through. They spend all day and all night on their phones. So if they don't get back to you right away, that just goes with the game, with the amount of time that they spend on their phones. if I don't play AAU, I can't play in college. That's wrong as well. There are state, regional, and national team experiences will definitely help your cause. But if you aren't playing club or travel, it is harder to be recruited. I will say that. So I would recommend playing AAU or club. I would recommend playing multiple sports in high school as well, but that sport that you're trying to play in college, if I'm a volleyball player that is playing softball during the softball season, I'm still going to work on getting swings and passing and maybe doing drills all weekend long in the spring, even though I'm not playing volleyball for my high school team at the same time, because the best of the best, that's what they do. And then lastly, with the number of scholarships that are out there at the Division III level that are not athletic scholarships, there is a myth that you have to earn a scholarship, an athletic scholarship. So there's all kinds of other opportunities to help you be and participate on a college team: financial aids, grants, loans, academic scholarships. And some universities will help you find jobs. So it's usually a combination. Again, don't think that most scholarships are all or nothing. That's only for men's and women's basketball and football at the Division I level. Okay. Lastly, this is what you should be talking to your parents about. Like, what is your best fit school? Parents or guardians. So is it size? Is it sport, religion? Is there, is that a Catholic university that you want to attend? Is the weather? Like what will play a role in your decision? And you should have those conversations with your parents, guardians, people you trust as much as possible. You should also be talking, in my opinion, with your parent or guardians about what your priorities are as a student athlete at the collegiate level. So you might have a partial scholarship at the Division II level or a full ride scholarship at the NAI level. So are you looking, the NAI level might come with an opportunity for immediate playing time, whereas a partial scholarship to any school probably shows that you're going to have to work into playing time. You might not start off with that type of playing time. So what's more important to you, playing right away at an NAIA school or having to work for that at the Division II level, at the next level up? Those are decisions that you have to talk over with your parents and guardians, those people that you trust, your coaches. Jacob Polakovich was offered a preferred walk-on spot by Coach John Beeline at Michigan, and he chose to take his full ride scholarship, which he's had for the last 4 and 5 years. He had a redshirt year as well. So he has had 5 years of a full ride scholarship. He's playing at USI, a Division I school in Indiana right now, and he chose that over the walk-on position at the University of Michigan because he wanted to play right away. So having those conversations early with your parents or coaches is important. My objective is for you all to leave here knowing that every recruit's path is different. So some of you might be recruited as freshmen, some of you might be recruited as seniors, some of you might not be recruited at all, and you might have to walk on. And then, you might have to earn your scholarship if you are to receive one in college. So everybody has a different path. But hopefully the same goal is, for you to earn a college degree, for you to play the sport as long as you can, the sport that you love as long as you can, for you to have a great college experience and travel the world, and for you to leave college with little or no debt. Those are my goals for my student athletes. Obviously, then we like them to come back here and help us with camps and clinics and do as much as they can to give back to our community. But I teach in the high school. If there's any questions that you have, if you would like your student athletes to come meet with me for 5 to 10 minutes, or you have questions, you can contact me. You can email me. I will help you as best as I can. I try to keep this presentation as broad as I could in terms of covering a variety of sports. But the truth is that I don't know entirely a lot about baseball or football recruiting. So having those conversations with your people, your high school coaches, will obviously help you. So I'd recommend that. If you do need help configuring your core GPA as well, I would go to our counselors, Mrs. Meerman, Mrs. Smitley, Mr. Passanaw, and they are all incredible people. They do a great job with everything that they know. And so if you have questions about what this college campus is like or what my core GPA is, go meet with your counselors. So anyway, that's it. Go Cougars, and thank you for listening.